Here's something I want to highlight for you.
Okay.
So this is interesting. This is Philadelphia. Harris still won Philadelphia. So why would you care about manipulating these places?
So it looked consistent all across the board. So you couldn't. So the data wasn't too obvious.
Here's something.
What do you think?
Here's a concern. How do you?
Dumb guy spoke. You like
No. You're fine.
Guy. You're fine.
but it's a good question because you're like, hey, would you do this to make it look normal, consistent? Consistency is the key. Here's the thing: how do you win a state?
By the most votes.
You get the most votes.
Right.
You get the popular vote. Doesn't matter what counties you win or lose.
Right.
You get more votes. So if my demographic of voters doesn't live in the big cities, and I only have so many of them, how do I impact those places with a lot of voters where they're more liberal? I either have to get more of my people to show up and vote, or I have to get less of their people to show up and vote.
We do this, or potentially the machines are manipulated so at a certain number of votes, even though Kamala won because it would have been too obvious that she lost Philadelphia.
How many bomb threats were in Pennsylvania?
I think they had 32 or more.
He said 30. It was 32.
Yeah, at least 32.
Wow.
So that would make all the rural districts. This would add to the rural districts vote, so he'd win the popular vote. Got it. That makes sense.
You have to reduce the amount of votes in the denser areas.
Yep.
That's how you'd win a state.
Yep.
And that's what we're potentially seeing is, even though this isn't enough to change the outcome of that county, this is enough to shift. If you did this across multiple counties,
Right.
this would be enough to shift the outcome of the state because you took the amount of votes.
Then win the state.
Then you win the swing state.
Right.
So this is very interesting. We see
so
this.
You shave it. So basically what you're doing, although she's still going to win, you're just shaving. You're just shaving,
reducing.
Add into your vote totals. So what ends up happening, even though you kick ass in the rural areas, in the very blue areas, you can't win them because that would be too obvious. What you do is you just take 4,000.
Take a little bit off the top.
You take 4,000, 15,000 votes, and she still wins.
Just that county, though.
Yeah, just that
Right.
county.
You win
Right,
the state.
got it.
Right.
And here's what's interesting is we don't see this just in Philadelphia. We've seen this in multiple counties, even the smaller counties as well. It's just, it almost seems to be, if you compromise the tabulators, anywhere a lot of people are voting on these systems, you're going to try and do this.
And this is why he kept complaining about mail-in voting, because for some reason they can't manipulate the mail-in vote, but they could sure shit manipulate the election day
But why
vote.
couldn't they? If
This
it's
is a great
fed
question.
into a tabulator.
Although they use the same machines, generally, sometimes they have slightly different variations. The problem is it's the accountability of the hand cast votes. People mail in their votes. Election day, you got to get it all done in one day. You got to get it all processed in one day.
Yeah.
Mail in, you can send them in early, and there's still a paper trail, and they go to the county level, I believe. It's not by precinct, it's not by location. So you got a larger window, and the problem is, let's say, hey, I just got mail-in votes. I just got 5,000 votes sent in, and I run it through the machine, and I'm getting less than 5,000 votes on the back end, and it's not like, hey, we need this done today. We have more time. The concern is it may be a risk that they didn't want to take. If they were doing this.
Because she said paper trail. There's a paper trail. I have evidence of how I voted, and you motherfuckers, that's not how I voted. Yeah.
There's a concern if you could have caught this if you went really heavy on mail in.
Good. All right.
Yep. So maybe they decided not to. We do have a little
follow-up question to this is related to my other question from a couple slides ago about the counting the mail-in votes. I'm looking for a smoking gun. Is there a way to look at the mail-in votes that are spiking on election day versus the amount of people that can actually process the vote? We know how many staff there are. We know how many precincts there are. We know how many.
Here's what I think about that.
Does that make sense?
I hear what you're asking.
You lost me there on that one.
No.
You lost me too. I fell asleep.
I hang out with Ken, so I understand what he's saying. What he's saying is you have all these Republican poll workers. The problem is this: you can't, with something like this, it would have to be machine operated, because you can't have witnesses, because always somebody would talk. So you couldn't have the poll workers feeding in the mailbox and running them wrong. Right. Because someone would know Someone would know and it would get out. Someone was going to go to Thanksgiving and be like, you ain't going to believe how we made Trump win the
Yeah. And also I'm maybe
right?
grasping
There's
straws.
a demographic you were targeting there, weren't you? Into mind.
How can we tie this data to real world evidence to say, here's the smoking gun.
Yes.
This ties to there was fraud here, because that physically cannot happen. I rest my case.
No, all right, I understand now. So what he's asking is, if we were to look at these precincts or these places where we're seeing a sudden and rapid shift of votes for one candidate to the other, and we look at the amount of Democrats in that area or Republicans in that area, does it line up? That's your smoking gun. We did that for Clark County, Nevada. We did that for early voting in Clark County, Nevada. They have early voting. And the concern is the same for what we're seeing in Pennsylvania. We're seeing the same after X amount of votes in these places, just rapid and consistent growth for one candidate. And we match.
After X amount of votes,
After X amount of
one
votes,
candidate starts shooting up.
Yep.
And there's no reason, and there's no other. It
doesn't match demographics.
It doesn't match demographics. It also doesn't match the normal mail-in voting.
Yep.
And again, I go back to the witnesses. No witnesses. You couldn't manipulate the mail-in vote because people would have to know.
It'd be harder, much harder.
I have a dummy question, because I have not voted in person in years. I always vote by mail. Are some ballots 100% digital now? That's different in each precinct, right? Some are still fill in or punch.
It depends.
And some are on the screen and they're fully digital, right?
Yeah, there's a couple different types depending on what systems you're using. There's they'll give you a paper vote or a paper ballot, and you'll fill it out, and then you'll submit it, and it'll still get scanned by the machine. And then there's machines that are like actual touchscreen. You go up and you vote, and then it'll either print off your ballot and it'll still get fed, or it'll be saved and that'll be transferred. And then there's a little tape on the side that it'll print your vote on that tape. It's sealed, but you can see it on the screen.
So there is still a paper trail.
There is still a paper trail
for election day ballots.
In Pennsylvania, in Clark County, Nevada. I think Georgia may be completely digital and not have. Don't quote me on that one, but generally speaking, there are paper votes to look at.
I want to point out to everybody who's looking at this graph, and because I understand how dense it is for our people. We're just usually just going, you screaming and stuff. But look at the bright red at the end. Once the votes hit a certain level, all of a sudden, for no reason, no valid reason, everything changes and votes start shooting up for one candidate.
Yeah,
that is unusual and weird.
Yes, and there's one more county we'll highlight. This is Erie County. This is a little aggressive,
they weren't
crazy.
fucking around in Erie.
So same concerns, mail in. We don't really see rapid change.
It doesn't match at all.
And then election day is very aggressive, very rapid change.
Wonder why Erie? Wonder why Erie?
Well, if you look at,
I think Erie is the third largest.
I think it's either the third or the fifth. I think it's the third. The concern here is, when you break down the data, you want to look at how are people voting and where are they voting. And if they only have X amount of, however you've designed the algorithm, anywhere that more people are voting on only a few, locations, it's going to potentially change more.
Right.
Philadelphia, a lot of machines, a lot of places to vote, a lot of places to tabulate. But you get smaller locations, but more dense, you would theoretically see rapid change in some of those places, and we're seeing that in Erie.
Can I help explain? Can I help explain the graph? So if you guys look at the opening of the graph on election day, you'll see that she's really overperforming at the beginning of the day, and as they hit the voter threshold, what ends up happening is all of a sudden everything goes to Trump. Now, if she started performing that way early, that would have been consistent throughout the day. There's no reason for her to. And if you look at the mail-in vote, you can see her overperforming. Why? How the fuck? There's no way that everybody, all the Democrats sent their mail-in vote, and then all of a sudden look at the craziness on election day. And it didn't do it from the jump. Had it done it from the jump, it'd be a lot harder to prove. It does it when you guys hit a certain number of votes. That's fucked up.